Hello everyone, tonight we're heading way back to a time before the wheel. Imagine the wind brushing across a bone-dry Mesopotamian plain. The stars above are brighter than anything you've ever seen because there's zero light pollution, just a black sky smeared with glitter. You're hauling sacks of grain across this harsh, cracked earth using nothing but ropes and a wooden sledge. Each step is a groan. Each tug leaves your palms raw. And honestly, you probably won't survive this. But hey, your back-breaking labor is about to nudge humanity one dusty inch toward a game-changing invention. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know where are you tuning in from, and what time is it where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the cradle of civilization, ancient Mesopotamia. It's around 4000 BCE, and while there's farming, writing, and even beer, there's one thing suspiciously missing: wheels. You've got bricks, you've got baskets, and you've definitely got the need to move heavy stuff. But if you want to transport grain water jars or logs, it's all up to your aching muscles and a wooden sled that scrapes along the dirt like nails on a chalkboard. People have tried to make it easier. Some genius in your village figured out that if you put the sledge on rolling logs, it kind of glides until the log shoots out the back and someone breaks a toe. You quickly realize this isn't scalable. Also, splinters. So many splinters. Still, this log roller technique works okay for small projects, hauling a big statue maybe, but the prep is annoying, and you need a constant supply of logs. Not exactly ideal in a place where trees are rare and prized like family heirlooms. Most of the region is flat, sun-baked land between rivers, and your choices are simple: carry it, drag it, or bribe someone stronger than you. By now, humans have had agriculture for thousands of years. They've domesticated animals, built cities, invented irrigation math and ziggurats that scrape the heavens. But somehow they're still yanking stuff around like it's the Stone Age. It's one of the strangest historical gaps. We had the idea of the wheel way before we actually used it for transport. Historians still argue whether this lag was about technology culture or just plain oversight. Maybe people were too busy inventing taxes. One major issue: wheels don't show up easily in nature. You don't look outside and see squirrels rolling past on carts. Nature does spirals and cycles, sure, but the perfect round disc attached to a stable frame isn't something you stumble across between berry picking and avoiding snakes. So people weren't ignoring the wheel on purpose, they just hadn't wrapped their heads around the concept. There's also a materials problem. You need wood that's tough, dry, and shapeable. Mesopotamia, with its muddy plains and sparse forests, isn't exactly lumber paradise. You can't carve round things easily with stone tools, and even if you could, there's the next puzzle. How do you keep that round thing spinning under a heavy load without it popping off or jamming? That's not a riddle you solve while trying not to get trampled by oxen. So instead, people stick with what they know: dragging. It's loud, it's exhausting, it ruins your sandals. But it works barely. You're out here with a team of laborers pulling a crate of barley for trade. It takes hours to go a mile, and by the time you get to the market, you smell like regret and sweaty rope. But nobody's complaining because they don't know anything better. Meanwhile, downriver, someone's cousin's uncle swears he saw a man lift a sledge with logs underneath it, and it moved like magic. But that story is dismissed faster than you can say. My back hurts. That guy's always exaggerating. Last week he said he saw a crocodile bite the moon. But slowly you notice a pattern. The richer the city, the more they try weird transport tricks. In Uruk, they're experimenting with different types of sleds. In Lagash, there's gossip about someone trying to rotate the sled itself using round ends. It sounds absurd, like putting shoes on a chicken to make it fly. Then, one night by firelight, an old trader tells you something strange. It's not the load that's heavy, he mutters, chewing on a date. It's the way you carry it. You nod, like that's wise, but you secretly wonder if he's just sun-addled. The truth is, most people in this era don't need to move huge things very far. Villages are compact. Markets are local. Boats carry goods more efficiently than land ever could. So, while the idea of a wheel might flit through someone's brain now and then, there's just not enough pressure to invent it. Not yet. Still, the seeds of frustration are growing. You can feel it every time the sledge hits a rock and jerks your shoulder. Every time an ox stops mid-haul to stare into the void. Every time you see a circular stone and think, what if? And then almost imperceptibly, something starts to shift not in the soil, but in the mind. You wake with straw in your hair and a back that feels at least 4 centuries older than the rest of you. Today's task, moving limestone blocks to the riverbank for temple construction. You sigh, stretch, and prepare for a day of shouting, dragging, and that one guy who always fakes an ankle injury by lunch. The team is already cursing under their breath by the time you reach the site. The blocks, each roughly the size of a grumpy goat, are perched on wide wooden sledges. 2 people push, 6 pull, and one unlucky soul guides the path, tossing sand in front to reduce friction. If he forgets to sand ahead, the sled screeches across the earth like a dying walrus. Then comes the fun part. The logs. You roll one under the sledge push with your whole body, and roll another log underneath as the first pops out the back. It's like a treadmill from the underworld. Everyone's sweaty, angry, and deeply aware that one misstep equals a squashed foot, or worse, a squashed ego when the supervisor sees you trip. Despite the chaos, there's a rhythm to it. A primitive choreography of grunts and timber. You pause and look around. Somewhere in this organized misery is a half-solved puzzle. Logs clearly help. They reduce friction, distribute weight, but they're unreliable. They shift. They split. They splinter like your hopes. And most damningly, they're not attached to anything. It's a trick, not a tool. A temporary solution, not a transformation. Still, this method survives for centuries, especially for moving stone monuments. In fact, historians still argue whether the use of rollers is what delayed the invention of the wheel, because it gave people just enough of a workaround to postpone real innovation. Why build a wheel when you can bodge your way through with sweat and cylinders? Meanwhile, someone tries wrapping the sled's runners with soaked animal hide, hoping to glide across wet ground. Spoiler, it mostly creates a slippery mess and ruins a perfectly good goat skin. But you have to admire the creativity. One builder, let's call him Oru, decides to try something else. He hollows out a tree trunk and tries to roll it down a hill with a basket of dates inside. It works in a chaotic, fruit-scattering way. Oru stares at the trunk and wonders, could I shape this into something flatter? Rounder, easier to control. He's on the right track, but his neighbors mostly laugh and call him Date Roller. The nickname sticks for generations. The reality is, round stuff is tricky. To make a smooth, balanced circle out of wood, you need tools sharp enough to shape in sand. You need wood that doesn't crack under pressure. You need patience and precision, and patience is in short supply when everyone just wants their grain delivered before sunset. Back at your camp, you overhear two elders arguing. One insists that sleds will always be better, less to break, easier to build. The other thinks round things are the future. If the moon rolls through the sky, she says, "Why not us?" You pause, intrigued. Not by the philosophy, by the idea that maybe, just maybe, it could roll. It's around this time that sled rollers take a weird detour. Someone carves large discs out of stone, not for transport, but for ritual use. They're set upright, leaning against temple walls, sometimes painted. They look suspiciously wheel-like, but nobody's trying to put them under a cart. Instead, they're symbols, wheels of the heavens, circles of eternity. Basically, the ancient version of we like the idea of wheels, but not the practical part. Quirkily enough, some sites suggest early circles were used in ceremonies where people rolled giant stone discs down temple steps to symbolize time or fate. Whether that's true or just ancient performance art, who knows? But it's clear the round form had meaning long before it had function. The day ends with one final push, literally. Your team hauls the last block into place. Cheers erupt. Someone opens a clay jug of barley beer. You sit, sip, and rub your shoulder. And, just for a moment, your eyes drift to the discarded log rollers beside the sledge. You wonder what would happen if you carved them into perfect circles, attached them firmly to the sled, and let them spin. But then someone hands you a skewer of roasted fish, and the thought drifts away, lost in the haze of dusk and fatigue. That's the thing about revolutions, they don't always arrive with fireworks and fanfare. Sometimes they start with a misused log, a snapped rope, and a stubborn person wondering why we're still dragging everything like it's 5000 BCE. The scent of damp clay fills your nose as you step into the potter's workshop. It's cool inside, shaded by woven mats, and the air hums with the soft squelch of hands shaping earth into vessels. You crouch near a boy spinning a flat round slab of wood under a lump of clay. It turns fast smooth with hypnotic grace. You blink, and something clicks in your brain. There it is. A wheel. Except it's not for movement. It's a potter's wheel, and it's been here for a while. Historians still argue whether it showed up in Mesopotamia around 3500 BCE, or even earlier in nearby regions, but the consensus is clear: the potter's wheel came before the transport wheel. Which is, frankly, kind of bonkers. Because what you're staring at is a perfectly functional wheel, round balanced, rotating around a central peg. The potter kicks it, or spins it by hand, keeps the momentum going, and molds clay with divine precision. And yet, no one's slapped a few of these on a sledge and called it a day. You watch the wheel spin. You watch the clay rise. And you wonder, how has nobody made the mental leap? Is it fear tradition, or are they just really, really into pottery? Truth is, the potter's wheel isn't born out of transport needs. It evolves from a simpler tool called the tournet, a kind of turntable. Originally, potters would shape clay while rotating it slowly by hand. Eventually, someone figures out that if you can spin the base faster, you can make symmetrical pots way more efficiently. It's the Industrial Revolution of the pottery world. Suddenly, vessels are smoother, rounder, easier to mass produce. But here's the catch: the potter's wheel is fixed. It's rooted to a central pivot and mounted to spin in place. It doesn't roll forward. It's more like a lazy Susan on steroids. Transport, not even on the radar. You watch as another potter leans over his wheel covered in clay up to the elbows. He hums while he works, spinning and shaping with a rhythm that feels like music. You ask him if he's ever thought about using the wheel for something else, like, say, moving cargo. He chuckles. Why would I? I'm not hauling anything. I'm making jars. That's the mindset. Wheels are tools, but only within their job description. Nobody's asking them to multitask, and this mental compartmentalization isn't unique to ancient folks. Even today, we silo our ideas. Phones are for calling, ovens are for baking, wheels are for spinning clay. Until someone breaks that pattern, and suddenly we're FaceTiming while microwaving a burrito on a scooter. One afternoon, an apprentice gets clumsy. He drops a pot, which shatters dramatically, of course, but also jolts the wheel right off its mount. The disc rolls across the floor and crashes into a storage bin. Everyone laughs, but you stare at the rolling disc like it just whispered the secrets of the universe. That thing moved. On its own. Later, you sneak back into the workshop. You pry the wheel off its post, set it on the ground, and give it a push. It wobbles, tips, but rolls a few feet. Your heart skips. You try again. Smoother this time. It arcs across the dirt floor like a puppy learning to run. And still you hesitate. Because, as magical as it seems, there's a problem: you can't steer it. And you can't attach anything to it either. There's no axle, no support, no way to hold a load without it tipping over like a drunk goat. The potter's wheel might be round, but it's not built to bear weight. It's not built to move forward while turning. It's just not built for wheels. Still, the potential haunts you. You lie in your reed mat that night, staring at the stars, dreaming of round things rolling forward. You imagine pots gliding down dusty roads, people laughing as they chase after runaway carts. Somewhere, a potter's wife scolds him for staying late again. Somewhere else, a trader complains about a bruised shoulder from dragging his wares. And, in the shadows of a half-lit workshop, a smooth wooden disc leans against the wall waiting. There's even a theory, fringe but juicy, that potters did try converting their wheels into transport tech, and failed. The story goes that early attempts resulted in disasters: carts that flipped wheels, that cracked loads, that scattered. So they gave up, shrugged, and went back to dragging. Nice try, they said, but it's not practical. And honestly, that's fair. Without the idea of a fixed axle, the wheel can't fulfill its true destiny. Right now, it's like inventing the airplane, without wings. Close, but not quite. So the potter's wheel spins. Beautiful. Useless, at least for transport. But, like many inventions, it plants a seed, not of movement, but of motion, of turning, of circularity. It whispers, round is powerful, and someday soon someone will listen. You're crouched in the dust again, this time watching a donkey cart wobble across the courtyard in what might generously be called a controlled disaster. Except it's not a cart. It's an experiment. A weird, rickety contraption with flat planks for a base and 4 circular discs shoved awkwardly underneath. 2 of the discs are already cracked. One is spinning crooked. The whole thing leans left like it's judging you. And yet, it's moving. You rush over as the builder, an older man with soot-streaked hands and that spark of "I haven't slept in days," waves the flies off his forehead. His name's Galzu, and he's been bothering the potters for months, sneaking their wheels, carving notches into them, hammering pegs into their centers. His latest gamble, mounting those discs onto wooden rods, primitive axles, and slotting them into the base of a makeshift platform. The result isn't exactly elegant. It groans, it shakes, and it terrifies the donkey. But it's mobile. Sort of. And it's got you hypnotized. Now, here's the twist: Galzu didn't invent this for transportation. He's a brickmaker. His issue, moving stacks of clay bricks from the drying yard to the kiln a few dozen feet away without wrecking his back. He wasn't thinking about revolutionizing trade routes or building chariots, he just wanted to stop limping home every night. That's the magic of invention. Sometimes world-changing ideas are born from personal laziness. Still, his wooden discs aren't really wheels. They're too thick, too heavy. More like clunky slabs carved into a vague circle. The axle is just a stick jammed through the middle bound with rope. The friction is intense. After 2 test runs, the rope starts smoking. Literally, you offer to help. Together, you shave the discs, thinner, reinforce the base swap in smoother wood for the axle. You even smear fish oil on the parts where wood grinds on wood, early lubrication, though the smell is less than ideal. Soon, the movement becomes smoother. You can push it without breaking into a sweat. A few neighbors wander over. They ask what it is. Galzu shrugs. A rolling plank. Everyone nods as if that answers anything. But one man, Kibram, a local herder, squints at the contraption. "What if you put a basket on it?" he says. "Tie it to a goat. Let them do the hauling." Everyone laughs. Goats. Ha. But the idea sticks, and not just because goats are surprisingly motivated by apples. Here's the key moment. Someone figures out that if you mount the wheel to the axle instead of the platform and let the axle spin with the wheel, the friction goes way down. Historians still argue whether this leap happened in Mesopotamia or nearby regions like the Caucasus or Central Europe. But it's here, on these dusty plains, where this knowledge begins to spread. Suddenly, the game changes. Instead of the wheel and axle turning together like one sluggish mass, the wheel rotates around the axle. That's like switching from dial-up to fiber internet. Okay, maybe not that fast, but in Mesopotamian terms it's basically teleportation. Still, you have to carve the wheel perfectly. A lopsided one will throw the whole cart into a death wobble. You spend days sanding, trimming, adjusting. You discover that attaching a solid wooden hub in the center helps the wheel stay stable. It's genius, and an utter pain to craft by hand. One afternoon, you roll your cart across the market square just as a group of traders are struggling to carry amphorae full of oil. You offer to help. The cart wobbles under the weight, but it holds. You cross the square in half the usual time, and nobody's shoulders explode. Everyone stares. Someone whispers, "It's like magic." Word spreads. So do the copies. Crude carts start appearing everywhere. Farmers use them for grain. Builders use them for bricks. Priests. Okay, priests still make the slaves carry things, but they admire the carts from a distance. Not everyone is thrilled. Some porters grumble that these lazy machines are taking away good labor. One elder says the cart is disrespectful to tradition. Another claims it will anger the gods. But others see opportunity. More goods moved in less time means more trade, more wealth, more influence. And so the wheel begins its slow, creaky, fish oil-slicked rise. But you know it's not quite ready yet. The wheels are solid, massive, heavy discs carved from planks. They do the job, but they're inefficient. You have to push hard to keep momentum. Turning is awkward. And forget climbing hills, gravity's still the boss. Still, it's progress. Real, visible, roll across the square kind of progress. And even though no one's invented steering yet, or suspension, or brakes, or even cup holders, one thing's clear. The wheel is no longer just a potter's tool. It's on the move. You're lying on your back again because, naturally, something broke. A wheel this time. Split right down the center like a too ripe fig. The cart it belonged to sits tilted and wounded beside you, half spilled with clay pots and half buried in your embarrassment. You rub your temples, resisting the urge to throw the broken chunk into the Euphrates. You aren't alone. Across Mesopotamia, carts with solid wooden wheels are having their moment, and their meltdowns. They're heavy, they're clunky, and while they do roll, they don't do it very well. They thud rather than glide over hard-packed roads. They splinter under too much weight. And don't even try turning unless you want the axle to groan like it's questioning all your life choices. But necessity has a funny way of showing up with a hammer. Traders want speed. Farmers want efficiency. Builders want fewer hernias. And wheelwrights. Yes, that's a thing now. Start experimenting. One day, while you're dragging a busted cart back to camp, you spot a man with 3 wheels laid out in the dirt. Except they aren't solid. They're made from multiple planks bound together with wooden pegs and a circular rim. He waves you over, grinning. Lighter, he says, tapping one. Stronger. Cheaper. You run your fingers over the seams. It's brilliant. Instead of carving a wheel from one giant slab which often splits, he's assembling them from smaller seasoned pieces. Think of it like early IKEA flat-pack innovation minus the soul-crushing instructions. This is a turning point. Composite wheels spread fast, not just because they're more reliable, but because they introduce something Mesopotamian society loves: specialization. Now, you don't need a single massive tree or a sculptor's touch. You just need teamwork. Carpenter cuts the planks, joiner pegs them. Leather worker adds bindings. Everyone gets a piece of the pie. Quirk alert. Some wheels are painted with eyes, spirals, or celestial symbols. Were these early forms of branding protective talismans? Stylish overcompensation. Historians still argue whether these designs served a function like warding off bad luck, or were just ancient Pinterest boards. Meanwhile, someone gets bold and hollows out a groove around the edge of a wheel, fitting it with a copper rim. It's expensive and time-consuming, but it adds serious durability. The metal guards the edge, taking the abuse instead of the wood. You push one across a stony path and granite barely thuds. Sure, it's louder than a philosophical goose, but the trade-off is worth it. This leads to another realization. Wheels don't just need to roll, they need to endure. Mesopotamian roads are not paved. They're dusty, rutted, full of sharp rocks and occasional surprises left by passing livestock. Every bump sends shock waves up the axle through the frame and into your wrists. So, anything that reduces jarring is worth its weight in barley. Still, carts remain simple: 2 wheels, 1 axle flatbed. No suspension. No pivoting front end. Turning means either dragging the whole cart sideways or praying your oxen have good instincts. Don't expect grace. Expect grinding. But something else is changing scale. Now that wheels are lighter and easier to build, larger carts appear pulled by more animals and carrying more goods. Where once a merchant brought a few baskets, now he brings barrels. Where once a farmer needed a whole day for delivery, now it takes half. You hear the clatter of carts more often in the streets. Wheels are multiplying. You also start seeing variations. Bigger wheels for distance, smaller ones for stability, thick-rimmed wheels for construction work, narrower ones for speed. It's not one size fits all anymore, it's a marketplace of options. Like the very first wheel catalog minus the annoying ads. Still, not everyone's convinced. The older generation clings to sleds and shoulder pulls. Wheels break, they mutter. Wheels cost, and they're not wrong. A cart is an investment. The wood alone isn't cheap, and finding someone to shape the axle socket correctly, that'll cost you 2 baskets of figs and your dignity. But the culture is shifting. Carts now accompany funerals, the honored dead riding in wheeled platforms toward their resting place. They feature in temple parades with sacred idols jostling awkwardly atop their wooden thrones. The wheel becomes a symbol not just of labor, but of progressive status, even of the gods themselves. And here's your moment of fringe fascination. Some scholars argue that the wheel wasn't invented per se. It emerged a kind of conceptual evolution from roundness in nature and tools, like how water wears stone into curves, or how tortoise shells roll when you poke them. Don't do that, by the way. Wheels may have been less of a eureka and more of a that's interesting. Either way, you now spend your days in a sort of circular reverie. You carve wheels, test them, break them, fix them. You dream of lighter carts, stronger frames, even pivoting axles. But that's madness. That would mean turning without chaos. You chuckle at the thought to toss another piece of timber onto the fire and lean back as your latest wheel spins in the twilight. It's imperfect. It's loud. But it's real. And it's moving. You wake to the sound of clanking wood and impatient oxen. Another cart squeals past your tent, its wheels groaning under the weight of amphorae sloshing with date wine. The driver yells something about a crooked axle, but it's hard to hear over the creak of stressed timber. This is life now, wheels everywhere, and none of them quiet. The streets of Mesopotamian cities like Ur and Lagash are changing. Where once traders shuffled along with donkeys or dragged sleds through muck, now they roll. Slowly, jerkily, sometimes with minor disasters, but they roll nonetheless. The wheel isn't just an invention anymore. It's infrastructure. And that means one thing: standardization. You notice it first at the carpenter's stall. He's measuring a wheel with a knotted cord and muttering numbers under his breath. If everyone keeps bringing me custom-sized axles, I'm going to lose my mind, he grumbles. So he starts cutting them all to one length. Others follow. Soon you've got a standard axle width across half the city. Even stranger ruts in the road start forming tracks carved by wheels of roughly the same spacing. Carts glide into them like they're on invisible rails. Pull too far left or right, and you rattle like a dropped xylophone. These grooves aren't planned, but they're obeyed. It's primitive traffic engineering driven by accident and necessity. Historians still argue whether this early rut system was intentional or simply a case of roads adapting to technology, instead of the other way around. Meanwhile, wheelwrights begin to formalize their craft. You overhear one using words like tension and grain direction. He talks about hardwoods for hubs and softer woods for spokes, yes, spokes. He's experimenting with hollowing out wheels and connecting the rim with pegs, trying to reduce weight without losing strength. His prototype collapses after 20 feet, but hey, that's progress. And you start noticing something else who gets to use wheels. Because it's not everybody. Carts are still expensive. They require maintenance. They break down. They need space to turn space most homes in crowded city alleys just don't have. So for now, wheels are elite. Temple complexes use them. Merchants flaunt them. The palace uses gold-inlaid ones for sacred processions, even if they only move 6 feet before stalling. There's this awkward moment when a noble tries to roll a ceremonial cart into a courtyard paved with baked mud bricks. The weight of the wheels cracks the tiles. Oops. That's when the first dedicated cart paths emerge. Flattened dirt lanes, sometimes covered in reeds or stones, built to handle the stress of wheeled transport. Infrastructure is adapting. Slowly, begrudgingly. But it's happening. You naturally can't stop tinkering. One night, frustrated by the constant wheel slip on slick clay roads you experiment with, ridging the wheel edges, adding shallow grooves like sandals. The result, better grip, slightly less slippage. Of course, now the wheels make a strange humming noise when rolling, and a passing priest insists it's cursed. You quietly smooth them out again. At the same time, there's a growing divide between urban and rural wheel use. In cities, narrow alleys and stepped roads make carts difficult. People still carry goods on shoulders or use sleds. But outside the walls, on the flat plains between villages and farmlands, wheels shine. Farmers lash oxen to carts and haul grain produce and water over long distances. This shift alters trade routes. Villages once limited to what they could walk or drag now send carts full of goods to markets miles away. More produce arrives more often from further. Supply grows. Prices shift. Economies ripple. And it all comes back to wheels. There's even a bizarre invention you see in a small village near the Tigris, a cart with a roof. Just a little canopy over the top meant to protect the driver from sun and dust. It's wobbly. It's top-heavy. It flips in a strong breeze. But it marks the beginning of something bigger, thinking about the rider, not just the cargo. Quirk of the Week. A traveling entertainer mounts his drum on a small-wheeled platform, tugging it behind him as he plays. Children follow him like he's the Pied Piper. Eventually, someone copies him only with a harp, then a mobile shrine, then a food vendor. And before long, the city has its first mobile services. It's not quite Uber Eats, but it's something. You also start to see carts used in war, slowly at first. Primitive siege wagons, mobile towers, crude transports for armor and supplies. Not quite chariots, that's a drama for another time, but enough to extend the battlefield. A wounded soldier can now be wheeled away instead of dragged. A stack of spears arrives with one cart instead of 10 porters. Efficiency reaches the military. Of course, wheels break there too. A cracked rim at the wrong moment can turn the tide of a skirmish. You hear rumors of a general cursing a wheel so violently, it's still considered an unofficial Mesopotamian proverb. But here's the thing you keep thinking about. The wheel has gone from curiosity to culture. It's woven into rituals, trade, war, music, architecture. It isn't just tech. It's identity. It's Mesopotamian. And no one seems to remember how long it took to get here. That, for centuries, people had spinning pottery discs and still lugged baskets on their backs. That it took 1,000 tiny, silly steps. Fish, oil goat carts, cracked axles, smelly leather bindings to reach this clanking, squeaky moment. Now, you sit back and watch two carts roll past each other in the street, just barely not colliding. Their wheels dip into the same grooves pass without fuss, and continue rolling toward a future that feels at last like it's picking up speed. You're standing in a field, squinting against the midday sun, watching a cart do something truly shocking turn. Not skid, not drag, not tip. It turns. Like it's done this before. Like it means it. The front wheels pivot smoothly on a newfangled joint, the entire front axle, rotating just enough to change direction without tearing the cart apart or traumatizing the oxen. You don't say anything at first. You just blink. Slowly. Then you whisper, witchcraft. It's not, of course. It's engineering. Someone finally cracked the code of the swivel axle, a hinged connection that lets the front axle rotate independently from the cart body. It's rudimentary, sure. No ball bearings or springs. Just wooden pins, animal grease, and a prayer. But it works. And this seemingly small change. It opens a floodgate. Now, carts can maneuver through tighter village paths, dodge potholes, well, most of them, and actually back up without dismantling half the wheel. You see one driver do a little victory loop in celebration. He nearly knocks over a fruit stall, but still it's progress. The pivoting axle spreads quickly. Not because it's easy to build, it's actually kind of a nightmare to get the angles right, but because once people see it in action, they demand it. It becomes the Mesopotamian version of flexing with power steering. Historians still argue whether this innovation came from pure trial and error, or if it was inspired by something like potter's turntables, which already rotated on a vertical axis. Either way, someone saw potential in turning more than just clay. But of course, with new technology comes new drama. Some carts pivot too far and twist their axles clean off. Others jam mid-turn, flipping their contents into nearby canals. One particularly unfortunate merchant tries to show off by turning sharply at high speed and, well, he now owns 2 half-carts. You win some, you splinter some. So the craftsmen go back to work refining the kingpin, that central post allowing the axle to swivel. They reinforce it with leather washers. They adjust the height. Some get wild and add decorative knobs on top because if your cart turns like a dream, it might as well look fabulous doing it. Meanwhile, society adapts again. Paths are widened. City planners. Yes, there are rudimentary ones now start measuring street angles to accommodate turning carts. You overhear one muttering 24 degrees. Maybe 23 if the goat pen moves. A planner with ambition is a dangerous thing. More carts means more congestion, though. The streets of cities like Dnieper become chaotic mosaics of wheel ruts, ox hooves shouting drivers, and carts parked half sideways like teenagers who failed chariot school. You start to see traffic conventions forming, right-of-way, common turning areas. Even in one hilarious case, a guy standing at a corner with a stick directing cart flow with dramatic flailing. It's not just carts changing either. People start organizing goods differently because of the new mobility. Grain is stored in transportable barrels. Textiles are folded to stack more evenly. Even religious offerings are redesigned to be cart-friendly, because nothing says divine respect like symmetrical stackable goat cheese. Fringe fact of the day in a town, a group of monks straps a shrine to a wheeled cart, attaches bells to the spokes, and declares it a mobile oracle. It rolls through the market, dinging melodically, while the monks interpret its bounces as divine messages. It promptly crashes into a melon stand. The locals decide the gods are angry about something. Back to real-world impacts, the pivoting axle leads to a surge in long-distance trade. Routes that were once winding slogs through farmland become more direct. Drivers can navigate tighter turns, take shortcuts, avoid steep inclines. You see the maps being redrawn. You see new rest stops, simple huts with food-water wheel repair tools springing up between cities. It also changes how you build carts. You notice builders moving away from heavy oak planks toward lighter, more flexible woods. Wheels get thinner, more refined. Rims are now often reinforced with bronze strips, not copper tougher, more reliable, less prone to warping in heat. Even the carts themselves grow more varied. Covered wagons, open wagons, narrow speed carts. Some even have 2 pivoting axles, which seems both ingenious and stupid depending on who's driving. And here's a delightful quirk: someone paints tiny eyes on each side of the front wheel, claiming they help the cart see where it's going. It's nonsense, but strangely comforting. You consider doing the same, maybe adding a smiley face for emotional support. Culturally, the wheel's now embedded in ceremony and song. you hear a lullaby comparing a baby's future to a cart rolling steadily across the plains. A scribe writes a poem where love is like a wheel, spinning, sometimes stuck, always returning. Wheels show up on temple carvings in seals, even in astrology charts symbolizing the heavens turning above the earth. But despite all this, carts remain deeply Mesopotamian. No wild flourishes. No overly complex mechanisms. Practical, yes. Functional, absolutely. But still grounded in mud brick cities, ox-pulled rhythms, and that eternal squeak of wood on dry clay. So you keep building. Keep refining. You try adding a second turning joint to help stabilize heavy carts. It kind of works, though. Now it feels like steering a wet fish. You experiment with suspension using twisted reeds as shock absorbers. Your cart bounces like a toddler on a sugar rush, but it's something. You've come far from sleds and pottery turntables. You've passed through clunky slabs, cracked hubs, failed pivots. Now your wheels turn. Your roads ripple. Your city buzzes with motion. And beneath all the shouting drivers and squealing axles, there's a quiet hum of something larger beginning to move. Not just carts, civilization. It's early morning, and the dew hasn't even burned off the fields yet. You're standing in front of a workshop with smoke curling out of a crooked chimney, watching a man hammer thin strips of bronze around the edge of a wooden wheel, like he's taming a stubborn snake. It's the rim's new best friend, metal. Not the whole wheel, no one's gone that far yet, and for good reason. Solid bronze is absurdly heavy and ridiculously expensive. But a bronze tire. That's a clever compromise. It reinforces the wooden rim, keeps it from splintering under heavy loads, and extends the life of each wheel. Plus, it makes a satisfying clink when the cart rolls over cobbles, which is fun until you've heard it 500 times in a day. The process is messy. The bronze strips are heated until they're flexible, then clamped around the wood while still hot. The cooling metal contracts, tightening like a hug that occasionally catches fire. A few wheelwrights scorch their beards off before figuring out a safer method. One uses river mud as insulation. Another just stops having a beard. This shift to metal rims marks the start of industrialized wheel maintenance. You now have specialists, metal workers for tires, carpenters for spokes, even wheel greasers who keep carts from squealing like stuck pigs every 20 feet. It's becoming an economy. Meanwhile, wheel shapes are evolving. You spot a cart rolling past with slightly concave wheels designed to help hug the rutted tracks that now define the major roads. Another has angled spokes, probably more aesthetic than aerodynamic, but hey, everyone's trying something. And here's where it gets weird. Some engineer, probably sleep-deprived and full of lentil stew, builds a cart with triangular wheels. His theory: the bounce helps on uneven terrain. You watch it clatter along for about 20 feet, violently tossing its cargo like a bad carnival ride, then shatter into wood chips. He shrugs and says, back to the round ones. Historians still argue whether the transition to bronze was driven more by military metallurgists experimenting with wheel parts or by traders demanding sturdier carts for long hauls. Either way, it changed everything. You now have wheels that can handle longer journeys, carry heavier loads, and endure hotter climates without falling apart halfway through a desert crossing. Trade explodes. Goods once considered rare lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, cedar wood from Lebanon, spices from lands you've only heard about in half-drunken bar songs now arrive regularly. The wheel is no longer just Mesopotamian. It's intercontinental. And as goods move, so do ideas. You start seeing subtle design differences: wheels with 6, 8, even 12 spokes. Wheels carved with floral patterns. Wheels lacquered with red dye, mostly decorative, mostly terrible for traction. But the important part, everyone's watching everyone else now. One scribe even sets up shop near a city gate to record cart traffic like it's birdwatching. Oh, a Syrian spoke pattern rare this season. The carts themselves become more than just tools, they're status symbols. You hear nobles bragging about their high flange wheels or ceremonial gold leaf hubs. Someone commissions a cart with inlaid shell mosaics. It weighs twice as much and tips over on its debut ride, but still it was fabulous for those 10 seconds. You begin to notice the wheel creeping into the language. May your path be smooth, and your axle straight becomes a blessing. Don't reinvent the wheel is said to stubborn inventors, though. Let's be honest, everyone's still trying to. And broken wheel becomes an insult. A man who can't get things done. A lover who doesn't pull their weight. A priest who talks too much and rolls too little. Fringe tidbit. One town holds a wheel race during the spring festival. Just wheels, not carts. People carve their own and roll them down a long, dusty street. First across the line wins a loaf of honey bread and an evening with the mayor's daughter. You compete once. Your wheel wobbles dramatically and crashes into a goat. The goat wins. Back in the world of grown-ups, wheelwrights start forming guilds. Not formal ones, yet no secret handshakes or initiation rites involving ox grease, but networks of craftspeople who share tools, gossip, and occasionally sabotage each other's designs. They debate things like spoke count rim width and the best wood oil combo for wet season durability. Someone starts writing it down. The first wheelmaker's manual is born. It's more recipe book than textbook, but it's a start. Military commanders, ever the opportunists, notice the increased durability and maneuverability of metal-rimmed carts. Suddenly, supply lines stretch farther. Soldiers get more food, more weapons, and better morale until they realize it also means fewer breaks. A cart-mounted ballista prototype shows up at one fort. It snaps in half during testing, but again progress. And then there's the flood. Every few years the rivers rise too high, the levees groan, and suddenly your cart isn't going anywhere. Roads become rivers. You wade waist-deep through muddy chaos, watching wheels float spin and occasionally vanish beneath the murk. But once the waters recede, wheels come back stronger. Some genius adds drainage holes to the hubs. Another invents a liftable axle for shallow floods. You survive by lashing your cart to a goat and hoping for the best. In all this, one thing remains constant: the wheel's quiet revolution. No kings declared it. No gods handed it down on tablets of stone. It wasn't born perfect or sudden. But it's everywhere now, under every sack of barley, every merchant's stool, every scribe's mobile desk. Rolling, rolling, always rolling. You of course can't stop tinkering. Your latest project, a twin-wheel hand barrow. It's hideous. It rattles. It tips when you breathe on it. But you get it across town with only 2 minor injuries and 1 furious chicken. That's a win. The wheel has officially entered its messy teenage phase, bold, rebellious, a little full of itself. And yet, beautifully unstoppable. You're in a marketplace again, but something's different. The carts no longer creak and lurch. They roll with a weird kind of swagger. It's subtle, but unmistakable. Some of them have sleeker frames, tighter turns, a smoother ride. You spot one glide over a rocky patch like it's dancing. What's going on? It's not just the metal rims anymore. It's something deeper, an invisible alignment between design use and intention. The wheel is growing up. Welcome to the golden age of wheel standardization. You probably didn't expect bureaucracy to play a major role in wheel innovation. But here we are. Scribes, city officials, and temple merchants are suddenly very interested in making sure every cart doesn't come with a unique axle width or wildly different hub size. Because nothing clogs a supply route like a wheel that can't be repaired without reinventing your toolkit. So begins the quiet paperwork revolution. You see tablets with diagrams, rough, jagged etchings showing ideal wheel radii and recommended spoke counts. One particularly ambitious artisan drafts a universal axle spec which gets laughed at for being too idealistic, until 3 royal transport carts break down in the same week due to mismatched parts. Suddenly, everyone wants his tablet. Historians still argue whether these standards were imposed top-down by palace decree or evolved organically from trade hubs needing smoother logistics. The truth, like most things, is probably messy, a mix of panicked temple accountants and grumpy ox cart drivers tired of replacing wheels every full moon. And, oh, how the drivers rejoice. You overhear one tell a friend the new hub fits like a dream. Swapped it in an hour. Didn't even lose a finger this time. Progress. The benefits are immediate and widespread. Wheelwrights can now mass-produce parts with fewer mistakes. Merchants stock interchangeable spares instead of a chaotic mess of sort-of-fits pieces. Even armies carry standard-issue repair kits complete with pre-cut pins and replacement spokes. A bored scribe adds decorative flourishes to the instruction tablet. Someone else uses it as a cheese board. That's government for you. But not everyone's thrilled. The artisan class splits into 2 camps. On one side, the pragmatists who love the ease and simplicity of standardized wheels. On the other, the traditionalists who think every cart should be unique, a rolling fingerprint of the builder's soul. They grumble about creativity being crushed beneath the spoke of conformity, which is very poetic, but mostly just means longer repair times. You try building one of each. The standardized wheel goes together like a dream-tight joint's no wobble practically purrs. The artisan one, gorgeous, intricate, also wildly uneven and so heavy it cracks your floor. You keep it anyway because art deserves respect, and because it makes a fantastic conversation piece. Here's a fun side effect as wheel parts become more consistent. Carpentry tools evolve too. You see sharper chisels, better awls, new clamping methods. One guy invents a pedal-powered lathe and promptly loses a sandal in it. Totally worth it. Meanwhile, trade flourishes like never before. Carts loaded with grain wine linen and copper snake across the land, following predictable routes with dependable maintenance stops. You spot one caravan that has uniform wheels on every cart. The aesthetic alone is stunning, like a rolling military parade of engineering satisfaction. But then the wilderness. Out past the tamed roads and organized cities the world still resists. The terrain gets rough. Hills rise. Forest paths twist. Standardized wheels perfect on flat terrain start struggling. They break more easily, get stuck, slide sideways on damp moss. And so begins the next wave of innovation off-road adaptations. Builders tinker with thicker rims, wider hubs, spoked wheels with flexing joints, a kind of proto-suspension that absorbs shock like a drunken goat. Some even wrap the rims in strips of rawhide which shrinks as it dries and provides traction. You watch one cart cross a soggy hill like it's tiptoeing across a sleeping lion. It's ridiculous. It works. Then there's the bizarre fringe of experimentation. Polygonal wheels with curved edges for terrain negotiation red, jostling your kidneys loose. One guy fills the wheel with sand, claiming it balances itself as it rolls. It doesn't, but it sounds amazing as it goes. Open scholarly debates now buzz. Not around should we use wheels, but what kind of wheel for what terrain. Mountain carts get wide-grooved treads. Desert carts stay light and narrow. River valley carts get waterproofing. Even the military gets involved testing battle carts with reinforced bronze-spiked hubs. One prototype flies down a hill, knocks over a small shrine, and is later described as divine intervention. All this specialization births new professions. Track surveyors chart wheel-friendly paths. Load optimizers calculate weight distribution for optimal traction. You meet one who speaks exclusively in ratios and eats only pickled onions. Genius. Terrifying. And then there's the legend of the infinite wheel. Somewhere deep in the mountains, a recluse is said to be building a wheel that never wears down. Made of hardened stone, wrapped in animal bone, and set with talismans. It's probably nonsense. But travelers swear they saw it once gleaming under moonlight, perfectly round and humming softly. You go looking, of course. All you find is a squirrel with an attitude problem. Close enough. Back in the cities, the standardized wheel gets another upgrade decorative hubcaps. Functional, sort of. Stylish, absolutely. One prince commissions a set carved from obsidian. They shatter the first time he breaks too hard, but for a moment his cart looks like it's riding on stars. You begin to notice how people treat their wheels now, not just as tools, as companions. A merchant rubs oil into the wood with reverent fingers. A child names her cart's wheels Speedy and Crashy. An old woman speaks to hers like an old friend. "Come on, love," she says, patting the hub. "Let's make it to the river one more time." You get it. You've seen the evolution sled to stone, disc to spoked wheel, wobble to glide chaos to order. And now wheels are culture, infrastructure, even identity. You build a small shrine in your workshop, just a carved wheel set on a stone. You don't pray to it or anything. But sometimes, when the road's long and the sun's low, you glance at it and whisper, "Thanks for getting us this far." And the wheel keeps turning. You're standing at the edge of something massive now. Literally. Before you stretches a war chariot, its gleaming wheels braced against the ground like a predator ready to pounce. Two perfectly balanced spoked wheels lean and taut like tendons on a sprinter. A carved platform just wide enough for two warriors, maybe three if they're really friendly or unfortunate. And up front, a pair of horses jittering with energy and snorting steam like early prototypes for sports cars. Yep. We're entering the era of elite mobility, and the wheel isn't just part of daily life anymore, it's now a military flex. You climb aboard one of these light chariots, grip the sides, and immediately understand why this changed everything. The speed, the sway, the terrifying sense of momentum as the horses lurch forward and the world blurs. Your stomach stays behind for a second or two, then catches up with complaints. These wheels. They aren't just functional, they're precision instruments. Thin but strong. 6 spokes, sometimes 8 for perfect load distribution. Wide enough for speed, narrow enough for sharp turns. You think back to the days of clunky wooden rollers and shake your head. Those would be dust before lunch in this battlefield ballet. And yes, they are built for battle. It's believed the Hurrians and Hittites were among the first to master true war chariots, but Mesopotamians weren't far behind. There are old carvings worn, but proud, showing kings thundering into battle reigns, taut arrows flying from fast-moving platforms. The wheel has become the ultimate power amplifier. Where once a man walked, now he rides faster than any soldier can chase. Historians still argue whether the chariot's dominance was really about speed or about shock and awe. After all, these things are noisy, dramatic, and honestly terrifying. Picture dozens of wheels spinning across the plains, dust clouds trailing like cloaks of war. Most enemies likely broke ranks before the first spear even landed. The elite nature of these wheels is clear. Only the wealthiest states can afford them. Bronze rims horse training specialist wheelwrights chariot repair crews. It's a logistical nightmare. But the return's immense. You cover more ground strike with precision withdraw before retaliation. It's like discovering teleportation in a world still using donkeys. Meanwhile, back in civilian life, the influence spreads. Everyone wants a taste of the prestige. You start seeing sport carts smaller than cargo carts, lighter than work wagons, just fancy. Designed for racing sometimes on roads, sometimes through packed market lanes, where crashing into a melon stand becomes part of the thrill. Some carts are pulled by donkeys, others by strong young men promised a beer and eternal glory. They rarely get either. One eccentric merchant starts hosting wheel duels, races through obstacle courses where the loser has to buy dinner. One ends in a canal. Another smashes through a spice shop. A third becomes legend when a cart takes a flying leap over a well and lands upright driver still holding his date fruit. But it's not all fun and war. This period also sees a sharp divide emerge between civilian wheel use and military innovation. Civilians still rely on basic carts, sturdy, practical, and fixable with a bit of rope and swearing. But chariot wheels, they're complex, delicate, elite. You try repairing one and nearly take out an eye with a rebounding spoke. So, what happens? You get specialized workshops, chariot wheels versus cargo wheels, city versus countryside. The wheel, once a humble circle of shared utility, now wears social labels. Oh, you've got the city-rimmed style, I hear that cracks in the rain. Not if you oil the axle, sweetheart. Even the designs start to diverge. Civilian wheels remain thicker, more forgiving, built for potholes and mule kicks. Military wheels go for speed and agility, sometimes even featuring leather tensioning straps inside the rim, sort of like shock absorbers only, with more squeaking and regular maintenance. Here's a fringe tidbit. One inventor claims to have made a three-wheeled chariot supposedly for better cornering. It works once. Then tips over, drags its owner face first through a sheep field, and vanishes mysteriously from historical records. Still, points for boldness. Then comes the logistics breakthrough, the dual-purpose axle. Instead of building completely separate wheelbases, someone invents a sliding axle system. Slide it forward, and the cart handles like a chariot. Slide it back, and it steadies for cargo. It's like getting sport mode and grocery mode in one. Merchants love it. Soldiers abuse it. You steal the idea for your own cart, promptly over-engineer it, and end up with a ride that tilts dramatically whenever you sneeze. One afternoon, you wander out to the outskirts of the city and see something odd. A chariot pulled over. The driver, a young noble, is sitting beside it, not fixing it, just admiring it. You sit beside him. He says quietly, "We used to walk, everywhere. Now we fly." You both watch the sun catch the metal rim just right, turning the wheel into a halo. The symbolism isn't lost on you. The wheel isn't just utility anymore. It's become symbolic, of status, of progress, of dominance. People start painting wheels onto temple walls, not just for function, but as emblems of power. You even hear of one temple where priests place a single perfectly round wheel on a pedestal and call it the Eye of the Sky God. Bold marketing. And still, it keeps changing. Someone somewhere starts building double-axle wagons. 2 wheels in front, 2 in back. Better balance, less tipping. More room for cargo. Soon, caravans stretch for miles, each wagon tethered to the next like a slow, squeaky caterpillar. The age of individual carts is slowly fading. Now it's fleets, convoys, organized movement. You miss your old squeaky single-cart days sometimes, but also, wow, this is epic. You take one of your chariot wheels and hang it on your workshop wall. Not out of nostalgia, out of respect. Because you know, without these elite inventions, without the warriors, the engineers, the wild-eyed inventors, you'd still be dragging things through the dirt. You pour a little oil over it, just enough to catch the sunset light. It gleams like something alive. The wheel's no longer just turning, it's accelerating. You wake to the jingle of bells and a slow rumble beneath your feet. As you crack one eye open, you realize you're not in a workshop or a dusty trade caravan. No, this time you're on something a massive platform of carved wood, mounted on wheels as tall as a man crawling down a carefully leveled stone road. There's incense burning. Musicians are playing flutes. A small crowd follows in reverent silence. This isn't cargo. It's a god on wheels. Welcome to the religious phase of wheel history, where the humble circle becomes divine transport, that platform you're riding. It's a processional cart used to carry sacred statues through the city during festivals. The wheels are reinforced, polished, even painted with celestial symbols. The axles creak under the combined weight of belief and bronze. And up top, nestled in embroidered cushions, is a deity carved from wood gold and superstition. People throw flowers. Someone weeps. A chicken escapes and becomes an unintentional omen. The transformation is striking. A wheel, once reserved for labor and war, is now also used to carry the gods themselves. It's a far cry from those early sledges dragged through swampy reeds, isn't it? But this sacred use brings new problems. These carts aren't designed for daily use. They're massive, heavy, and often ceremonial to the point of impracticality. One famous example requires 60 men to pull it. Another gets stuck in mud halfway through a city's biggest festival, and is later declared a divine pause in the ritual. Priests scramble to explain the wheel's spiritual meaning, while the audience fans itself and glares. Historians still argue whether the use of wheels in religion originated as a practical solution, move the statue without snapping your back, or if it was a symbolic gesture from the start. Some say the wheel represents eternity, the endless turning of time. Others argue it was just the best way to avoid hiring more porters. Whatever the origin, the impact is real. Wheels become sacred technology. Not just tools. There are laws written forbidding unclean hands from touching certain chariot wheels. A priest blesses each spoke before a major procession. You see one group fasting for 3 days before waxing their god's axle. That's commitment. And with sacred wheels come sacred engineering challenges. Since these carts are rarely used, the wheels often suffer from neglect. Cracked hubs, warped rims, bent axles. One craftsman becomes famous for spirit-proofing wheels, essentially overbuilding them to survive everything from divine intervention to rainstorms. His nickname, the Holy Roller. You meet him once. He has a hammer the size of your head and speaks only in metaphors. You immediately trust him. But not all sacred wheels are bulky behemoths. In some smaller temples, you see miniature chariots, tiny carts with tiny wheels used in ritual reenactments. They represent the journey of a god across the heavens or the return of spring. One priest lets you watch as a statue no taller than a cat is placed on a four-wheeled platform and slowly wheeled across an altar scattered with barley and rose petals. It's oddly moving. Later, you hear whispers about a lost cult that believed the universe itself was a wheel constantly spinning through time and creation. Their symbol, a triple-spoked circle carved onto cave walls, never quite aligned the same way twice. You try to track them down. You find a goat that stares at you like it knows something. That's about as far as you get. Meanwhile, outside the temples, the aesthetic of sacred wheels begins to influence everyday craftsmanship. Even mundane carts are suddenly decorated with sacred symbols, not because the drivers are devout, but because they believe it might stop the wheel from breaking mid-journey. You see wheels painted with suns, moons, spirals, even little gods riding on miniature thrones. One merchant swears by a charm hung from his hubcap, a carved frog with ruby eyes. Never lost a load, he grins. Unless you count my wife's laundry. That went over a cliff. There's also a rising belief in wheel omens. If a cart breaks down during a journey, was it sabotage or divine disapproval? If the wheel rolls away from its axle and into a crowd, does it mean the gods are angry? Or just that you forgot the cotter pin again? One temple scribe starts recording every wheel incident in a clay journal, convinced they form a prophetic pattern. He's probably wrong. But you find yourself reading it late at night just in case. Then come the pilgrimage carts, built not for battle or festival, but for the long haul. These carts are optimized for carrying supplies, sacred items, and sometimes entire families across rough roads to distant holy sites. Their wheels are the compromised children of war and worship, strong, but not flashy, durable, but not divine. You ride in one for a week, bouncing gently over hills and potholes, falling asleep to the sound of wheel creak and the soft whisper of prayer. On the last day, you help push the cart up a final slope toward a cliffside shrine. As the wheels bite into the gravel and the wind sings through the canyon, you feel something old and deep stir in your chest. Maybe it's exhaustion, or maybe it's the sacred circle spinning within you too. Later, you hear about a strange ritual from the highlands, the wheel burial. When a revered chariot or temple cart is too old to use, it's not broken down for parts. It's taken apart ceremonially, each piece burned or buried. The wheels are laid flat in the earth, marked with stones. Some believe the gods ride these wheels in the afterlife. Others think it's just good luck. You visit one such burial site. The wheels are long gone, rotted, or burned, but the stone markers remain. Circles within circles. You kneel and place your hand on the earth. It's still warm. Back home, you start carving your own small wheel, not for a cart. Not for display, but for something quieter. You don't know what yet. Maybe you'll hang it in your doorway. Maybe you'll roll it down a hill and see where it goes. Maybe you'll just keep it in your pocket, a reminder that even the simplest thing can turn sacred when given the weight of meaning. The wheel, after all, is just a circle, until it starts to move. You're sitting beside a fire tonight, hands rough with splinters, breath fogging slightly in the cool air. Around you, a group of tired merchants settle into blankets, their carts pulled into a loose ring like a wooden corral. The wheels creak as they cool, ticking softly like beetles in the dark. You're in the heart of something ancient, and yet new, the age of trade when the wheel becomes more than a tool. It becomes a promise. You run your fingers over the rim of your cart's wheelwood, darkened from dust and sweat metal pins, warm from the long day's spin. That wheel has crossed deserts, climbed hills, rattled across stone roads, and through reed-choked marshes. And tomorrow it rolls on. Because now, finally, the wheel is not just for kings or priests or warriors. It's for merchants, for the hustlers, the traders, the risk-takers. Welcome to the golden age of Mesopotamian commerce where the wheel doesn't just carry goods, it carries ambition. And what are you hauling? Everything. Clay tablets, textiles, wine jugs, bronze blades, pickled fish, don't ask, indigo dye, incense wrapped in goatskin. Even a suspiciously jittery crate labeled live animals do not open. You don't open it. You do, however, hear low growling. You add more rope. The roads have changed too. You're not always slogging through marshes anymore. Cities like Ur-Nippur and Mari have begun to invest in formal roadways. Flat stones, hardened earth, and sometimes even early forms of curbs, short walls to keep your cart from sliding into some poor neighbor's courtyard. The most popular routes now form a vast, uneven web, stretching from the Euphrates east to the Zagros and west toward the Levant. Trade caravans roll day and night, the groan of axles and shout of traders becoming part of the soundtrack of civilization. But there's a problem: wheels break. A lot. You start noticing a trend: the traveling wheelwright. These are people, often half-engineer, half-magician, who roam from caravan to caravan, fixing cracked hubs, loose spokes, and bent axles. One even claims to be able to whisper to wheels. You watch him rub honey and ash into a splintered rim while humming off-key. The cart rolls fine afterward. Coincidence? Maybe, but you tip him generously, a fringe tidbit. In some regions, merchants actually begin naming their wheels. Not the carts, just the wheels. One old trader tells you his front left is named Squeaky, and his rear right is Death Wish. You think it's a joke until you watch him toss salt on Death Wish before crossing a rickety bridge. You're not sure if it works, but they do make it across. As wheel use explodes, so does wheel design innovation. Merchants begin commissioning custom wheels, wider rims for sand, thinner ones for speed, iron bands to protect against rocks, grooved patterns for grip. One group of traders even experiments with asymmetrical wheels, hoping they'll roll smarter on uneven terrain. Spoiler, they don't. But you admire the optimism. Then comes a real game-changer: interchangeable parts. You visit a large market near Akkad, where a group of wheelwrights are showcasing a new concept: wheels made in standard sizes. Same hub width, same axle bore, same spoke count. Now, instead of repairing a broken wheel, you can just swap in a spare. It's revolutionary. Prices drop. Journeys speed up. The resale value of carts goes through the roof. Historians still argue whether this development started in Mesopotamia or further east. But you're living it. You're there when the first wheel depot opens a small structure filled with spare wheels hanging from racks. For a small fee, you can grab a replacement and roll on. You stare at those racks the way a modern traveler might stare at a vending machine during a layover. Salvation. And then, the cities catch on. City-states, always eager for revenue, begin to regulate wheel traffic. Tolls appear on major roads. One particularly greedy town installs a checkpoint and demands payment per wheel rotation. You spend half a day trying to figure out how they're measuring that. Turns out they're not. They just like to see you sweat. Still trade flourishes, and wheels become mobile vaults. You hear of one merchant who lines his cart with doublewood planks and hides gold between them. Another installs false bottoms to smuggle dyes past inspectors. You start noticing wagon guards, tough men with clubs who sit on the back axle like wheel-bound watchdogs. Sometimes they ride dogs. One does both. But not everyone rolls honestly. You encounter the wheel thieves of Lagash, a gang that doesn't steal carts, just wheels. They sneak into caravans at night, pop off a wheel or two, and vanish. Victims wake to find their carts listing drunkenly in the dirt like wounded beetles. One merchant gets so paranoid he sleeps inside his cart legs wrapped around the hub. He wakes every hour. He still loses a wheel. So you adapt. You start carrying a spare wheel, a full one, not just parts. This becomes common practice. Traders even boast about it. "Oh, you've got a single spare amateur. I carry 2.5. Ask me about the half." You don't. There's also a weird new fashion trend, wheel charms. People hang little carved talismans, frogs, stars, tiny shoes off their hubs, hoping for smoother journeys. One cart has a full garlic braid tied to the axle. You pass it and immediately crave soup. As the fire burns low tonight and your cart creaks quietly beside you, you realize something. This is the first time in history the wheel has been truly democratized. Not just used, but owned by the common person. By you. By that sleepy merchant snoring under a blanket. By the little boy selling dates from a pushcart with one lopsided wheel and 3 sincere prayers. And sure, it's not perfect. Roads break, axles split. Weather ruins even the best laid trips. But still, you roll forward. Because now the wheel is freedom. You whisper thanks to your front right. It's the quiet hero of today's journey. Tomorrow, it'll be the rear left. They take turns saving your life. You close your eyes to the sound of the wheel ticks in the night. The trade never sleeps. Morning spills across the dirt like warm honey as you creak your way into the outskirts of a city that practically glows in the sunlight. This is no muddy market town or half-built temple hub. This is the administrative core, the beating bureaucratic heart of Mesopotamia. Clay tablets, tall walls, incense-soaked halls, and tired men with very sharp reeds. And here, nestled among all the rules and scribes, the wheel is about to get legal. You pull your cart to the side of a rutted road and stretch your arms. A scribe in a crisp linen tunic immediately steps out with a stylus and a frown. "License, please." You blink. "For the cart?" He nods solemnly. "And axle registration. Plus wheel tax. Welcome to Regulation Nation, where your wheels must now answer to the crown. Because here's the thing, by now, the wheel is everywhere. Trade carts clog the roads. Priestly processions have reserved festival routes. Kings ride in gilded chariots that double as propaganda. And people being people get in each other's way. So cities begin issuing official rules for wheels. Speed limits. Load limits. Right-of-way hierarchies. You see a tablet that literally reads, "He who cuts off another's chariot shall pay 3 measures of barley and 1 apology spoken aloud." That last part. Mandatory. Loudly. One particularly meticulous city drafts the first known wheel inspection schedule. Every full moon carts must line up outside the city gates for turning and tapping. Officials check for cracks, wobble, and spiritual integrity. That last one's vague, but mostly involves muttering and poking with sticks. You fail once something about improper spoke reverence. You apologize to the wheel. It forgives you. And then there's the guilds. As wheel-making gets more specialized, so do the people behind it. You're introduced to the Cartwrights of Kish, a proud, slightly dramatic group of artisans who wear matching tunics and throw sawdust at weddings for luck. They've developed strict quality standards for wheel symmetry, balance, smooth rotation, and a curious new requirement, decorative flair. They insist that wheels should be beautiful and functional. One proudly presents a wheel rim inlaid with lapis lazuli. You ask if it makes the cart faster. He winks and says, "Only if you believe." These guilds begin to protect their craft and their profits. Unauthorized wheel makers are fined, sometimes even publicly shamed. There's a rumor that one man in Lagash made a wheel without guild approval and was forced to ride it downhill into a lake. Historians still argue whether that's true or just very effective propaganda. And so, with pride and paranoia on the rise comes a surprising innovation, the wheel stamp. Guilds begin marking their approved wheels with symbols, tiny carved glyphs, placed near the hub or axle join. These stamps serve as a kind of proto-trademark, a way to say, yes, this wheel was built by someone who knows what they're doing. You start looking for them everywhere. A tiny bird here, a spiral sun there. One particularly bold craftsman uses a grumpy-looking cat as his mark. It's very popular. But regulation doesn't stop at quality control. City governors begin tracking wheel movements, not just where carts go, but how often. You find one town that issues clay tokens each time you pass through a gate. After 10 passes, you owe a road maintenance fee. After 20, they give you a small cup of dates and a warning not to overuse public infrastructure. The dates are excellent. Then come the lawsuits. You see your first wheel-related court case near Ur. 2 merchants claim the same spare wheel after a collision. One insists he paid for it in full grain. The other argues it was spiritually promised during a drinking contest. The judge, who may or may not be fully awake, orders the wheel split in half. Both men shout. The judge laughs and says he was joking. He awards the wheel to the merchant who didn't shout. Justice is weird sometimes. The most influential legal development, though, is simple and elegant, the first written warranty. On a freshly baked tablet, a wheelwright promises that his wheels will last no fewer than 40 journeys, excepting storms, curses, or unnatural goat interference. You buy one. It lasts 39 journeys. You glare at a nearby goat. It looks smug. You do not pursue legal action. And while the cities are building laws around the wheel, philosophers start wondering if wheels mean something deeper. One wandering scribe corners you near a barley stall and asks if a wheel spins and returns to where it started, is it moving forward, or simply trapped? You blink. He nods. Exactly. Then he walks into a wall. You're still not sure if that was on purpose. But there is something to this idea of wheels as metaphors. You overhear a priest using wheel imagery to explain the cycles of the moon. A teacher compares life to the slow turn of a burdened cart, heavy yet moving. One bold thinker claims the gods invented wheels not for humans, but for themselves to escape boredom. That same man is later seen trying to build a cart pulled by birds. It does not go well. In smaller villages, a different kind of law emerges: folk customs. One community insists you must sing to your wheel before setting off. Another believes that if a wheel creaks on the 3rd rotation, you must spit over your left shoulder, or the journey will be cursed. You try both. The cart rolls fine. The locals nod approvingly. You get a free fig. All these rules, formal and informal, show something crucial. The wheel has now entered the fabric of daily order. It's no longer just about transportation. It's about identity, craft, responsibility, even morality. You see people judged not just by what they carry, but by how well their wheels carry it. And every so often, amid the taxes and inspections and philosophical tangents, you glimpse something gentler. A father teaching his son to grease a spindle just right. A grandmother drawing patterns on a toy cart for her grandson. A child turning a wheel on its side, pretending it's a sun rolling across the sand. You smile. The rules may multiply, but the wonder remains. Tonight you sit in a courtyard lit by oil lamps, your wheels resting beside you. You've passed inspection, paid your tolls, survived 3 audits and 1 near stampede. You stroke the edge of your front left wheel and whisper, "Thank you." It squeaks just once. You choose to believe it means you're welcome. The wind off the Euphrates carries a dry metallic scent as you ride through open farmland dotted with tiny villages and freshly carved irrigation canals. Your cart rolls steadily, the wheels groaning under the weight of the barley sacks you promised to deliver by sundown. But here, far from the temples and toll gates, something curious is happening. The wheel is growing legs, not literally, but close, because in these smaller rural communities where formal engineering takes a back seat to trial and error survival, people are hacking the wheel in ways no guild would dare. You spot the first example near a sleepy settlement west of Sippar. A man passes you on what looks like a wheelbarrow, with 4 legs crudely attached and little sled runners for when the terrain gets rough. He calls it a scoot cart. It rattles like a haunted xylophone and moves slower than a lazy goat, but it works. Barely. You try not to stare. This is the start of a creative explosion, what you might call rural improvisation meets mechanical chaos. Out here, people don't have access to city wheelwrights or imported bronze tools, so they experiment often with hilarious, occasionally brilliant, and sometimes downright dangerous results. One woman has built a dual cart system joined by a plank designed to carry double the weight without snapping her axle. You admire the ingenuity right up until she takes a turn too fast and the rear cart whips around like a wooden scorpion. No one is injured, except maybe her pride. A boy shows off his spokeless wheel, a solid clay disc covered in goat hide. It's not smooth, but it's oddly quiet. You help him test it over a rocky path. It thumps, loudly, like a heartbeat with rhythm issues. He seems pleased anyway. You buy him a fig. Historians still argue whether these rural innovations ever made their way back to the cities, or if they were dismissed as peasant nonsense and forgotten. But you suspect they left ripples. Wheels are adaptive, and the further they spread, the more they begin to mutate into shapes suited for different terrains, climates, and needs. You arrive in a village where the wheels aren't round at all. They're hexagonal. Seriously, you ask why. The elder shrugs. Flat sides don't roll away, which, okay, fair point. But watching someone try to push a hex wheel cart uphill is like watching someone slowly lose a game of life-sized dice. You help, you don't laugh. Much. And then there's the reversed axle craze. Some villages get it into their heads that if you mount the wheel slightly off-center, it'll create a natural forward motion like a gentle push from the gods. You ride one. It feels like being nudged by an enthusiastic sheep every 5 seconds. You admire the faith. But don't let the oddball designs fool you. Some of these villagers are quietly ahead of their time. You see a farmer with a cart whose wheels have interchangeable wooden teeth, which he swaps out depending on terrain. Another family reinforces their rims with woven reeds, creating a flexible, shock-absorbing effect. It works like ancient suspension. They call it marsh float mode. It squeaks a little, but glides over mud like a lizard on ice. One herder has created a multi-purpose wheel that detaches and becomes a spinning grain sifter. He calls it the whirl wheel. You call it a minor miracle. He asks if you'd like to invest. You politely pretend you didn't hear. The most surprising innovation, though, is bidirectional wheels crafted so the cart can roll forward or backward with equal ease. This matters a lot when you're driving through narrow goat trails and can't make a U-turn without plunging into a ravine. You try one and find yourself backing up confidently for the first time in weeks. You feel powerful, like a god of reverse. But not all is peaceful in the land of wheel play. Some innovations spark feuds between villages. You hear about a skirmish where one group accuses another of stealing their clay hub design. Insults are shouted. Wheels are slashed. One man paints his cart with a hexagonal curse glyph. It's mostly just 6 angry dots, but still tensions rise. So the villages start holding wheel fairs, seasonal gatherings, where inventors display their wildest ideas in hopes of trade fame or just a few laughs. You attend one. It's chaos in the best possible way. There's a 4-wheeled sled cart built to glide downhill and scream loudly at corners. A man tries to patent a hover wheel made of oiled goat bladders. It bursts. Children cheer. One woman reveals a musical wheel with reed flutes embedded in the spokes. It sings as it rolls badly but beautifully. Amid all this absurdity, you notice something subtle but important community collaboration. Villagers share techniques, swap materials, compare axle widths and grease recipes like they're trading secrets of the universe. No guild oversight, no taxes, just people working together to make rolling better. That's the magic of this chapter in wheel history. It's not about kings or cities or rules. It's about everyday people bending the wheel to fit their lives, and in the process, giving it new shapes, new roles, new dreams. Some even begin using small wheels in non-cart inventions. You see one affixed to a pottery table, turning it into a spinning platform. Another is part of a rope and pulley well system using the wheel as a counterweight for drawing water. One boy builds a kind of early scooter, pushing himself along with a foot while riding a platform over 2 wheels. He face plants, but you clap anyway. This is the slow birth of what might one day be called mechanical thinking, when people stop seeing the wheel as just for moving carts and begin imagining it as a force multiplier, a partner in labor, a seed of machines. At sunset, you sit on a hill overlooking a dozen tiny fields, their borders drawn in by fences, oxen tracks, and ruts carved deep by generations of spinning wood. You hear a creak, then a laugh. Somewhere below, someone's cart has lost a wheel. They curse, then someone helps. Then it rolls again. Because that's what wheels do, they roll. Forward, backward, sideways when things go wrong, but always rolling. And now, thanks to farmers' tinkerers' kids with goat bladders and women who whisper blessings to their rims, the wheel isn't just surviving outside the cities. It's thriving. The stars are still out when you roll into a flat stretch of desert east of Uruk. Your cart creaking softly as a few stray jackals skulk off the path. It's early, and the sand hasn't had time to heat up yet, but you know it will. The air already smells like dust and dried sweat, and there's an ache in your spine from sleeping on woven reed mats. But something in the distance glints under the first hint of dawn metal, catching the light like a signal. You squint, rub your eyes, and move closer. And there it is. Not a cart, not a tool, but a wheel glistening with strange reddish shimmer. Not made of wood. Bronze. You drop your bag. Things are about to get shiny. Up until now, your journey through Mesopotamia's wheelscape has been earthy, wooden, squeaky. But as metallurgy evolves and metalworking workshops bloom across the region, a new idea creeps into the minds of elite wheelwrights and experimental blacksmiths alike. What if we made parts of the wheel from metal? You roll up to a smithy near the river, drawn by the rhythmic clang of hammers and the occasional curse word muffled by soot. Inside, two apprentices are attempting to forge a bronze wheel rim, their arms slick with sweat, their eyes half blinded by the glow of the coals. It's still primitive, a thick band hammered into a lumpy ring, but it's the beginning of something huge. The benefits are obvious strength, durability, and resistance to cracking when the weather shifts or the wood dries unevenly. But the problems? Oh, they're equally obvious. Bronze is expensive, the kind of material kings hoard priests bless and thieves make life choices for. A single rim costs more than your entire cart. Not to mention it's heavy, ridiculously so. You try lifting one and immediately consider hiring a priest to bless your lower back. So naturally, the first people to use metal-rimmed wheels aren't farmers or potters. They're warriors. Your first sight of one in action happens just outside a fortress wall. A Mesopotamian noble demonstrates his bronze-rimmed battle chariot pulled by two snorting onagers, wild asses with a serious attitude problem. The wheels gleam, slicing through the dust like saw blades, and when he turns a corner, the added weight gives the cart a terrifying momentum. You hear a soldier mutter, "Hope no one sneezes in that direction." Historians still argue whether these early bronze rims were more decorative or truly functional in combat. But it's clear they impress. To enemies, to allies, to the dozens of scribes who start sketching cart outlines on their clay tablets, adding little shiny wheel symbols like emojis of doom. The elite start requesting metal hubs, too, especially for ceremonial carts. Not full bronze wheels, mind you. That would be madness. But inlays, spokes with capped ends, tiny decorations shaped like lion suns, or the occasional winged goat, a surprisingly popular motif. You're invited to a procession in Nippur, where the high priest arrives in a cart so encrusted with gold and bronze fittings that it barely qualifies as a vehicle. It's more like a rolling altar. The wheels, reinforced with metal bands, shimmer in the morning sun, while incense curls into the air. The whole city watches in awe, and a child whispers, "I think the cart just blessed me." It didn't. But honestly, you get it. Still outside the temples and palaces, the everyday wheelwrights start experimenting with more practical uses for metal. Small bits, just enough to strengthen vulnerable parts. Axle sockets, spoke joints, or even simple nails made of copper or bronze to keep the wheel frame tighter for longer. One cartwright shows you his latest design. A wooden wheel reinforced at the center with a bronze bushing a ring that reduces friction and keeps the axle from grinding into the wood. You ride the cart across uneven ground and realize it rolls smoother longer. You raise an eyebrow. He grins. You tip him a fig. In one village, a clever teenager reuses scraps of broken bronze tools to forge tiny metal clamps that hold cracked wheels together until payday. You ask if she plans to sell the idea. She shrugs. "Only if I get a cart with a canopy." Shades the real treasure. She's not wrong. Of course, metal brings drama. There are whispers that some merchants melt down stolen amulets to reinforce their wheels. One man is caught smuggling bronze through a false axle. Another claims his wheels sing to him now that they have metal in them. You don't know whether to be impressed or deeply concerned. You also see the beginnings of a split the fancy wheels versus the functional wheels. The former roll through courts and ceremonies pulled by perfumed animals and attended by flute players. The latter slog through fields, marketplaces, and border patrols, still wooden, still wobbly, but vastly more reliable for daily life. It's around this time that Mesopotamian art starts to change. Wheels become symbols. You see them carved into temple walls, often adorned with stylized spokes and surrounded by rays as if they're suns or divine instruments. One stele shows a god emerging from a chariot with wheels so ornate you suspect the artist had never actually seen a real cart. Another shows a battle scene where the wheels are drawn larger than the soldiers. Priorities. And amid all this metal mania, something else quietly shifts. People begin recording wheel repairs on tablets. Not just purchases, but maintenance logs. Replaced spoke cap, third moon. Polished axle rim, high water day. It may not seem revolutionary, but it marks a turning point. Wheels are no longer just tools. They're infrastructure parts of a system that needs care planning, and yes, the occasional flashy bronze accent. One day, a philosopher, or possibly just a tired traveler who talks too much, leans against your cart and muses metal in wheels. It's like giving a voice to stone. You nod, mostly because you're too tired to debate metaphor. But later, lying beneath a sky full of stars, you hear your bronze-bushed wheel creak as it settles. And for a moment it does sound like a whisper. So here you are, straddling two eras. The wooden wheel world you started in still thrives. But now it has a bronze shadow. One that gleams in temples and thunders across battlefields. One that tempts craftsmen, wows nobles, and leaves you wondering just how far this wheel can go. You run your fingers along a rim newly capped with metal. It's cool, smooth, and despite its weight, it makes the cart feel lighter. Because now you're not just rolling forward, you're rolling forward with style. The clay road beneath your cart fades into soft loam as you leave the lowlands and push toward a small port near the marshy fingers of the Tigris. Everything smells like damp grass and old fish, and somewhere nearby a frog the size of your head croaks like it has opinions. You're not here for frogs, though. You're here for a boat. Not to sail, but to watch something extraordinary, the marriage of wheel and water. At first glance, the two shouldn't mix. Boats float, wheels roll. Stick wheels on a boat and you get splinters in the river. Or so people used to think. But Mesopotamians. They've never met a boundary. They didn't want to poke with a stick and say, "What if we made it weird?" You watch as a group of dock workers unload a wagon with hollow wheels crafted from wood, but sealed with pitch and lined with clay. The result? They float. Not elegantly, more like stubborn logs, but still. One man calls it the fish cart. Another says it's for marsh terrain where roads vanish and you have to squelch your way through reeds and ankle-deep mud. And just like that, you've stumbled into one of the most niche, glorious failures in wheel history, the amphibious cart era. Historians still argue whether this was a fleeting curiosity or the early glimmer of something more ambitious. But for a brief time, inventors tried to blur the line between wagon and boat. You see a raft with rotating paddles connected to a wheel crank, powered by oxen walking in circles on deck. It barely moves. A heron flies past it backwards. You try not to laugh, but even when the wheels don't work on water, the conceptual gears start turning. carts aren't just for dry land anymore. And boats. They start borrowing wheel tech for themselves. You spot it first on a reed barge docked near the temple granaries, a rotating cargo platform embedded with low-friction rollers that help laborers shift barrels without unloading the entire hull. It's a wheel, a small one, hidden under woven mats and sandbags, but a wheel nonetheless. Further inland, a workshop is crafting portable ramps with miniature wheels beneath them, used to slide cargo between carts and boats during flood season. It's such a small detail that you almost miss it, but that's the point. The wheel is becoming invisible. No longer the star of the show, but a background player quietly making life smoother behind the curtains. In a town half drowned by seasonal river swells, an older man shows you his invention, a kind of flood cart with paddle-shaped wheels that churn through shallow water. It's terrible. You sit in it once. It moves like a stubborn bathtub and smells like disappointment. But you give him credit. At least it's original. You help him pull it back to shore. The mud tries to claim your sandals. Elsewhere, you spot a strange hybrid, a boat dragged by a wheeled sled used during dry months when the water recedes and boats are stranded. Instead of hauling them by sheer muscle, the locals use carts fitted with smooth, rounded wheels that roll over riverstone beds. It's slow work, painful, but better than dragging a barge inch by inch with a rope tied around your ribs. One scholar, squinting at the process with furrowed brows and ink-stained fingers, mutters, "This might be the first real example of intermodal transport." You offer him a date. He eats it absent-mindedly and writes "wheel," clever wet friend, in his tablet margins. But the most promising development comes not from boats themselves, but from the way ports handle movement. A new kind of dock design is emerging, one with raised platforms, ramps, pulleys, and what a local engineer calls a rolling cradle. You watch them lower a barrel onto it, roll it up to the warehouse, and tilt the whole contraption to store it in a high alcove. No shouting, no injuries, just quiet synchronized clunking. This is the slow birth of port automation. At least as much automation as you can get from 2 wheels, some rope, and a teenager with strong arms and no fear of splinters. One carpenter confesses that he's been experimenting with wheeled fishing gear. Little carts that deploy nets out into the shallows. It works, sort of. Until a crab army claims it as their new temple. You suggest metal reinforcements. He suggests fire. You agree to disagree. The amphibious cart itself never really catches on, not beyond these marshy border zones. It's too heavy, too slow, too splashy. But something important has shifted in the minds of the people. Wheels are no longer landlocked. You return to your campfire that night, the sound of croaking frogs and gurgling river water blending into the crackle of burning reeds. Overhead, stars shimmer in the ripples of the current. Your cart rests nearby its wheels, crusted with mud, one hub still drying from an accidental dunking. You lean back and imagine wheels turning beneath boats across streams, and maybe someday even across seas. The funny part, most people in the city have no idea any of this is happening. They're too busy polishing their chariot rims or arguing about axle width at guild meetings. But out here, where land and water meet, wheels are quietly learning new tricks. The kind that don't always work the first time, or the 10th. But that's the thing about innovation. Sometimes it stinks like river mud and crab pee. Sometimes it rolls sideways and flips over in a marsh. But every once in a while it floats. You wake to the sound of shouting, half excitement, half confusion, and the unmistakable rumble of wooden wheels on packed earth. A caravan is arriving, and it's a big one. Dozens of carts roll into the market square like beetles in formation, their wheels kicking up a fine dust that coats your teeth the moment you yawn. You weren't planning on following a trade convoy today, but those plans roll away pretty quickly when you see what's happening. A new kind of wheeled logistics ballet so coordinated it almost feels choreographed. This isn't just a trader with a donkey cart full of onions. This is a full-blown supply chain Mesopotamian style. You blink as carts pull into formation, each one lined up to match its neighbor like spokes around a hub. Some are single-axle, others are two-axle beasts pulled by yoked onagers, their hooves muffled with woven toe caps to soften the journey. Children jump down from driver's seats. Merchants bark orders. An old man mutters something about inventory misalignment, which you pretend to understand. Here in this dusty market town, you see the next evolution of the wheel, not just as a tool of movement, but as a system of coordination. Historians still argue whether these convoys were state-organized or just really efficient collectives of independent merchants. But it's clear that by this period wheels have become the veins of Mesopotamian trade. Goods don't just travel. They travel together on standardized carts along routes marked by shared rest stops and guarded way stations. You chat with a young driver tightening the bolts on a cart loaded with copper ingots. It's all about axle rhythm, she explains. If one cart gets off beat, the whole chain shudders. You ask what happens then. She shrugs. We yell. A lot. There's a joke among caravanners that the three most common sounds on the road are creak, grunt, and swear. You hear all three within 10 minutes. But beneath the dust and the noise, there's something beautiful happening here. A quiet revolution of infrastructure. You spot it in the way the carts are modular, built to hold standard-sized baskets that can be swapped out without unloading everything. Some have retractable roofs, woven from reeds to protect against rain. Others are fitted with dual axle brakes, a clever arrangement using twine and tension to reduce downhill speed. One cart even has a swinging water skin slung underneath to cool the axle during long midday hauls. The driver calls it wheel juice. And then you see tag tablets, small clay plaques tied to each cart baked with pictograms indicating owner cargo type destination, and payment due on delivery. It's the precursor to the modern shipping label, and honestly, it's way cuter. You follow the convoy out of town as they take off down the Royal Road, a hard-packed trade route that cuts through the wilderness like a dusty scar. Every few miles, the terrain shifts gravel here, sand there, the occasional patch of gnarled brush that wants to rip a wheel from its axle like it's peeling a pomegranate. This is where wheel design really proves itself. Some carts are equipped with detachable wheels, a brilliant and slightly cursed innovation, allowing broken wheels to be swapped mid-journey. One merchant carries spares stacked like giant cookies. Another has a spoke repair kit made from salvaged animal bones and gluey tree sap. You're both impressed and mildly horrified. And the roads. They're not just empty stretches anymore. Villages have built wheel stations, half rest, stop, half repair clinic offering axle grease water food, and in one case, wheel massages. You think it's a joke until a donkey-sized wheel is hoisted onto a padded platform and gently rubbed with warm oil. The cart owner closes his eyes and sighs like it's a spa day. It's not just cargo being transported. Information moves on wheels, too. You overhear two scribes swapping tablet updates about distant towns, news of crop failures, uprisings, even the sudden popularity of a new kind of reed hat, which, frankly, looks terrible. The convoy is part mail route, part gossip pipeline. Nothing moves faster than a wheel, except a rumor on a wheel. One driver tells you of a secret route through the foothills where special carts with wide, hollow wheels can glide over soft, low-S soil. The trick is knowing when to lighten the load, he says, tapping his head. You ask what happens if they don't. You bury the wheels and pray your cargo floats. Fair. You pass through a checkpoint, a simple wooden gate staffed by 2 half-asleep guards, and a man who insists on weighing every cart. Not the cargo. The cart. Apparently, some enterprising types have been skimping on wood thickness to save weight, then demanding full payment for broken wheels. Scammers, even back then. As the convoy pulls into a nighttime rest camp, fires flickering like sleepy eyes, you watch the wheels being stacked, checked, greased. One by one, every cart undergoes a ritual of care. It's meditative, almost sacred. You hear a father whisper to his son, "The wheel gives. So we give back." That night, wrapped in a blanket of stars and the creak of settling axles, you realize you've watched something profound unfold. The wheel is no longer a tool of the few. It's now a framework for society. Trade, communication, cooperation, they all ride on wheels now. And somewhere down the road, just past the final hill, the convoy creaks toward the next town. You can't see it yet, but you know it's out there, waiting, with markets, with temples, with someone ready to lift a lid and say, "What did the wheels bring today?" You smile and roll over. The answer, of course, is everything. You rub the sleep from your eyes as the early sun creeps across the plains, its golden warmth brushing the tops of the carts like a silent blessing. The caravan has moved on its wooden wheels, already leaving faint ruts in the earth. But you stay behind, drawn to the faint rhythm echoing from a nearby structure, a kind of wide, sunken platform surrounded by stone pillars and benches. It looks like a marketplace at first, but no one's bartering. Instead, a crowd has gathered in silence, watching something roll. At the center, a young boy sets a polished wooden disc spinning across the smooth clay. It wobbles at first, then rights itself spinning with a soft hum, as if humming a secret tune. You sit on a low bench, heart thudding with something you don't quite understand. This isn't trade, it's not transport, this is play. Yes, you've just stumbled into one of the most underappreciated revolutions in Mesopotamian culture. The wheel as a toy, a symbol, and eventually an idea. You might laugh. A toy. After all the mud, the chariots, the crab cart catastrophe. But here it is, a child's spinning disc. A simple pleasure. And yet this might be one of the most powerful roles the wheel has ever taken on. The boy's toy isn't alone. All around you, children push miniature carts, some with little clay oxen strapped to the front, others with tiny baskets filled with pebbles. Some even have detachable wheels, mimicking the real carts from the caravan. One little girl shows you hers proudly and says, "This one goes to Eridu." You ask what's in the cargo. Cookies. Naturally. Historians still argue whether these toy carts were simply entertainment or training tools in disguise. But either way, one thing is clear: by giving wheels to children, the Mesopotamians were passing down a powerful message. This is how the world moves. Learn it. Play with it. Shape it. You spot older kids playing a game involving rolling discs down a sloped path and trying to knock down little clay figurines. It's half bowling, half cosmic metaphor. You try your hand. Miss entirely. The kids cheer anyway, but it's not just kids. Elsewhere in the plaza, a priest carefully rotates a circular tablet inscribed with star patterns. A sidereal calendar. It tracks the heavens like a giant wheel, the seasons turning endlessly on its axis. The stars spin above, the tablet spins below. You stare up dizzy with the echo. It's not a coincidence. By now, the wheel has become more than just a tool. It's a symbol of cycles, time, nature, life. You hear it in prayers, "May the wheel of the year turn gently upon us." You see it carved above temple doors, spirals, circles, coiled serpents with tails in their mouths. You learn about a new kind of ritual a wheel day held during the first flood of the year. Villagers gather to push huge wooden discs through the fields, shouting blessings as they go. At the end, they burn the wheels in a celebratory bonfire, a gesture of thanks to the gods who gave motion to the world. Or maybe they just like setting things on fire. Probably both. One potter you meet shows you a wheel-themed drinking cup, its sides etched with stories of mythical wheels that roll through the heavens, delivering fate from town to town. He raises it with a grin. To the cart that never breaks. You clink your cup and silently pray you never have to ride that cart. Even scribes get in on the act. One tablet you see in the temple archive bears the image of a giant wheel-shaped city wall's roads, water canals all arranged like spokes from a hub. It's a vision of perfect order, says the scribe. Unrealistic, of course, but beautiful. He taps the center. This is where justice lives. You squint. It's also where all the toilets drain. Symbolism is messy, but not all uses are grand. In quieter homes, people use small, round grinding stones on their sides, rolling them back and forth to crush herbs. In bakeries, round ovens are shaped like wheels, lying flat, smoke rising from the center, like heat from the axle of the world. One baker swears her loaves rise better if she turns them halfway through. Like rotating wheels in the sun, she says, wiping flour from her nose. You even find art, real art, dedicated to the wheel. On one wall, a mural of oxen struggling to pull a massive cart up a slope, while the sun watches with mild amusement. Underneath, a single line, scrawled in cuneiform. Even the gods have bumpy roads. In another district, you come across an elderly musician playing a lyre with a circular resonator, designed to amplify the sound by echoing the natural harmony of turning wheels. The sound is mesmerizing. Notes loop back on themselves. You feel like you're floating in a spiral of memory and moonlight. As the day slips toward dusk, you return to the plaza and see the same boy with the spinning disc. This time, he's added tiny painted lines to the surface. When it spins, the patterns blur into mesmerizing shapes. You can't help but smile. This, you realize, is the wheel at its most powerful, not hauling mud bricks or turning mills, but capturing the human imagination. As tool, as toy, as thought. Somewhere, a priest whispers that the gods ride chariots made of gold and starlight. But here today, a kid with dusty feet and a spinning toy shows you the same truth. Maybe better. And as the stars begin their own slow turn above the city, you lie back on the warm ground and listen to the soft murmurs of people who no longer marvel at wheels, but rely on them, celebrate them, dream with them. After all, once the wheel turns in your head, it never really stops. You find yourself wandering toward the edge of the city, where the land begins to rise into gentle hills, the horizon softening in the haze of late afternoon. The hum of daily life fades, replaced by the steady rhythm of a workshop, wood chopping metal striking wheels rolling on stone. Inside, craftsmen gather around a large table cluttered with wood shavings, animal glue, and gleaming bronze fittings. They're shaping the next big leap for wheels, the spoked wheel. You lean in, close, fascinated. This wheel is unlike the thick, solid discs you've seen before. Thin, wooden spokes radiate from a small hub, held together with iron bands and polished with care. It looks fragile, but the master craftsman assures you it's both lighter and stronger than any solid wheel. Historians still argue exactly when the spoked wheel first emerged, but here in this workshop you see why it matters. With spokes, carts become faster, easier to maneuver, and much more fuel efficient when pulled by animals. The spoked wheel is the difference between a slow, grunting ox cart and a sleek chariot slicing across the plains. The craftsmen proudly demonstrate the difference by setting two carts side by side, one with solid wheels, the other with these new spoked marvels. The spoked cart glides almost effortlessly over the dusty floor. You nearly fall over chasing it. But it's not just speed. The spoked wheel opens doors literally and figuratively. You watch as they fit one of these wheels to a chariot frame preparing for a test run. The chariot is light, fast, and balanced, designed for the elite warriors and messengers who will speed across battlefields and deserts alike. You hear a smith's apprentice boast, "With spoked wheels, we can race the wind." The workshop elders nod, but they're cautious. Balance is key, one says. Too light and the wheel shatters. Too heavy and it's no better than before. You're handed a small model chariot with spoked wheels and urged to try it yourself. It rolls fast but wobbles dangerously on uneven ground, reminding you of those amphibious carts you laughed at not long ago. One craftsman tells you about an early rider who crashed spectacularly during a test run, scattering a load of olives and dignity all over the hill. The injury was minor, but the story lives on as a warning. Outside the workshop, you watch a team of horses trained to pull a chariot. The synchronization between animal and wheel is poetry in motion. Their hooves drum a steady rhythm, and the spoked wheels spin like whirlwinds barely touching the earth. You ask a rider about the dangers. He shrugs and grins. Faster means riskier. But without risk, we'd still be dragging logs. The spoked wheel isn't just a technological leap, it's a cultural catalyst. Chariots become symbols of power, prestige, and speed. Kings commission fleets of them, decorating wheels with painted patterns and metal studs. One royal chariot even features inlaid shells and lapis lazuli shining like stars on wheels. But this progress also stirs debate. Some elders worry that faster wheels mean more deadly battles. Chariots can outpace foot soldiers and deliver swift blows, but they also bring a new kind of warfare, one where speed and skill outweigh brute force. There are whispered fears about the future of combat, and the role of the wheel as a harbinger of destruction. You watch as children play at being chariot riders, chasing each other with sticks shaped like reins. Their laughter rings out unaware of the grave debates in council chambers. Back in the workshop, a cartwright hands you a rough sketch, a blueprint for a wheel with metal rims to withstand harsher terrain and longer journeys. It's revolutionary, but expensive. You wonder who will benefit when these wheels roll beyond the elites. You spend the evening reflecting on the spoked wheel's impact, faster travel, expanded trade, new warfare, and changing social hierarchies. The wheel has rolled far from its humble origins in mud and reed. Now it spins at the center of a civilization's ambitions and anxieties. And you realize that every revolution starts with a simple turn, sometimes slow, sometimes dizzying, but always forward. The chariot riders vanish into the sunset, their wheels stirring dust and silence behind them. You stay seated on a sun-warmed boulder outside the workshop, letting the hum of the day fall away. It's almost dark now. The wind smells of smoke and old wood, and somewhere far off a jackal yips into the night. The wheels have quieted, but they're everywhere. You begin walking slowly through the winding streets of the city, and it's like seeing with new eyes. There, on the side of a home, a decorative carving a spiral wheel with petals like a sunflower. A family crest, perhaps. Further down, a low hum comes from a mill, its grindstone turning steadily under flickering lamplight. It's not fast, it's not flashy, but it turns. It works. That wheel might have milled grain for 100 dinners, and it doesn't care if anyone ever notices. You step into a modest courtyard and find an old man sitting beside a simple potter's wheel shaping the last bowl of the day. He nods without looking up. The wheel under his hands turns with such care, such precision that you feel like you're watching a dance. I've used this wheel for 50 years, he says. It's not just a tool. It teaches patience, teaches balance. The bowl rises from the clay, spinning into form like a spell. And it hits you. This whole journey, from log rollers to carts, from sleds to spoked wheels, from toys to time itself, was never just about moving stuff. It was about moving you. The wheel wasn't invented in one flash of brilliance. It was crept into, tested, abandoned, returned to. It required rivers and reeds clay and crushed fingers, children's games, and king's chariots, failure after failure after failure. Historians still argue whether the earliest wheels were truly invented or slowly evolved. And, standing here now, you see the answer etched in every groove of every road. It wasn't invention, it was 1,000 tiny revolutions. You pass a group of scribes etching new records onto clay. One shows you a tablet where the wheel has become metaphor, the circle of fate, the loop of seasons, the cycle of kings. You smile. The same shape that once crushed your toes in a workshop is now inked into the mythos of an empire. You follow the road out of the city where the grass takes over again, and stars flicker to life above you. You imagine a time long before this one when the idea of a turning circle hadn't yet clicked, when moving grain meant dragging it with sore backs and raw hands. And you think of those early minds. Someone somewhere was the first to ask, what if it rolled? They were probably laughed at. Then they probably failed. Then tried again. And now, well, now we have everything. From strollers to spacecraft, from carnival rides to clock gears. Wheels hum through every part of our lives. We take them for granted. But somewhere deep in your bones, you'll always remember this, that the world didn't just change one day. It turned. You stop at a rise in the land and look back. The city of Ur. Yes, you know its name now twinkles with firelight, and its roads gleam faintly like spokes in a vast wheel. And you finally understand why this took so long. The wheel wasn't slow because people were foolish. It was slow because it had to be right. It had to fit into a world not yet ready for it. It had to grow with hands and minds that still believed walking was the fastest way to live. And now, after all this time, you can say with total calm certainty, we are all still riding the first turn. So, now, with the stars gently rotating above and the warmth of the desert floor fading beneath your feet, you let your breath slow. Each inhale, each exhale, its own small revolution. You've walked the same roads as oxen and kings crouched in the workshops where ideas were born in splinters and sweat, and leaned close as ancient wheels spun laughter out of clay and childhood. The invention of the wheel wasn't a singular spark. It was a dusk to dawn kind of story. Quiet, patient, relentless. And even now, long after the fires of Ur have cooled and the chariots have turned to dust, that story lives on in your bike's spinning tires, in the clock ticking softly beside your bed in the gear, turning somewhere in a spacecraft orbiting silently above. Funny, isn't it, that something as ordinary as a wheel could take so long to invent and yet touch everything so completely once it did? So lie back now. Let the rhythm of turning things lull you. The pulse of ancient carts creaking across stone roads of mill wheels, turning slowly by moonlight, of toy discs spinning in the dust, all echoing gently in the hush of your room. The journey has turned full circle, and now it's time to let the wheel roll on without you for a while. Sleep well, time traveler.